everyone. Welcome to Charlotte Mason Coast to Coast. I'm Amy Snell from the East Coast, and I'm with Celeste Cruz from the West Coast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're glad to consider the duties we have as Charlotte Mason educators and the delights that are in store for us when we embrace this philosophy of education with a thinking love. Now, Amy, I think we are both close to finishing up this first term. How many weeks do you have left?
We actually finished the term today. So, we made it.
We have 1 day. We finished week 2, and next week will be exam week, finishing up planning for term 2, getting the bookshelves ready and all of that, and we are looking forward to the break. At the beginning of the year, we did a chat on how to start the school year on the right foot, 3 tips that we had. And so we thought we would talk today about ending the term or the school year well. How do we keep up a healthy atmosphere, good habits, living ideas to finish strong? And we came up with 3 tips. Once again, we're going to share those here today. Amy, why don't you get us started with the first one?
All right. Well, the first tip we thought was to really try to enjoy and savor the last week in the same way that we do the first weeks. And there's this temptation to look at your schedule and see the things that you haven't done well or you didn't finish and try to like cram as much in as possible, or just to be exhausted and throw up your hands in exhaustion and say, let's just go right to our break week right now. I don't know. I'm sure you've never thought that, Celeste, but many of us can feel, one of those 2 extremes. And to me, the metaphor that Mason uses of laying down the rails is so helpful that for most of the term, I think we can chug along pretty steadily. But it's that first week where we need to really, it's hard to sometimes get the train moving. So if we can think about at the end of the term that we're trying to bring the train in to the station, which means, like as I take the train up to New York City all the time, and as you go from station to station, the train just feels different than when it's coming into Grand Central Station in New York. At each stop, the way that it slows down and yet can then keep going is that goal that we want. So to think about how to bring our whole homeschooling train in for this pause to regroup and do the things that you already were mentioning with an exam week and then preparing for the second term. So the same way that we can try to be thoughtful about the first week. How will we celebrate? How will we get the kids, cheer them on for waking up and starting school? What can we do? So today on Instagram, I posted that we actually went and out for breakfast, just like we did the first week of school, and they brought along some of their schoolwork. So that's very unusual for us, but it was just like that, gave us a little bit of energy and fun to change it up. And I think the more they recognize like, oh, this is the end, that it gives us momentum to start again and to understand the cycle of our homeschool day. So the key thing is that, it's easy to think how hard it is to the habit of beginning something, but Mason tells us that there is this habit of finishing as well. And she writes, what is worth beginning is worth finishing, and what is worth doing well. Do not let yourself begin to make a dozen things, all of them tumbling about unfinished in your box. It is worthwhile to make ourselves go on with the thing we are doing until it is finished. Even so, there is the temptation to scamp in order to get at the new thing. But we can, but she continues, but let us do each bit of work as perfectly as we know how, remembering that each thing we turn out is a bit of ourselves, and we must leave it whole and complete. This is integrity. And so we may scale back, we may slow down, or we may do something like, a fun breakfast or something like that to get it going, but we want to do the best we can even in that final week of the term.
Mm-hmm. Our second tip is to do exams. And if you know me, you know I love talking about Charlotte Mason exams. But the reason that I'm encouraging it here is not because Charlotte Mason required it, although they did in the schools, but because I find it to be such a nice way to close the term for a lot of different reasons. It gives a really nice sense of closure to the term, where it's kind of like this end cap where you all feel like it's been a real term well done, and you have these questions to sort of signify that in this process that the students can go through. I think it helps you when it comes to evaluation time to be able to evaluate with a little bit of distance, to have that sort of raw material to work with, where you can look at those examples and not just go with like your feelings about it, but with actual material that you can look through and use to plan your next term. I think it's fun, and it really is a nice way to inject some novelty into your term. My kids always really highly anticipate term exams because they know it's a change of pace. They get to show dad a lot of the work of the term, which I think really contributes to the enthusiasm, but bringing in outside people, answering, just having a different pace and feel to the week. It's just always something to look forward to. And in the PNEU School Teacher's Handbook, they talked a lot about exams. And one of the way that they described it in its most basic way, they said, its purpose for the pupil is to give him an opportunity to show what he has learned and what progress has been made. And I think when we think of it like that, we're giving the child this opportunity at the end of the term to show what he's learned and to see the progress that he himself has made. I just think it lends an importance to the work that they've done over the whole term, and just sends a certain message to the student, like what you have worked on is valuable. I want you to have the opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned. And so it's much more that kind of a tone, and not as much putting a student on the spot. It's showing what they know, and it's really lovely for that reason. So I always find it useful to dedicate those extra few days or week spending that time on the exams, because of what it does for us as a family of students, but then also moving forward into the term ahead.
Yes, and you've been such an inspiration to all of us on how to do exams and the purpose behind them. So if people are interested, you did a webinar for the families in the Philadelphia area that people can still purchase if you would like to listen to, and we can link to that webinar below as well. And there's so much on your blog of pictures, and both of us have on Instagram our celebrations and exam books and things like that. So why don't we go into the final tip, our third tip. And this is, what I have to tell myself always, like in this week, as I start to pull together the exams, and, I'm looking at where we're at, I can start to fall into a time of like starting to reflect and assess, and it just, it can make me feel discouraged. And so the third tip is that you should continue on till you finish the term, and then set aside, know that you have a time for reflection and assessment, but it may not be, especially if you have a personality like mine, it's not the time to really do it in the midst of the term. And what we found is that we don't have the perspective in the moment. It could be the thing of that day, or for me, a lot of times it will be the negative things rather than the positive things. I don't see things in the whole. And so I have in my teacher logbook a place where I can just, if I don't want to forget something, I'll jot down little notes as they come to me. And then during exam week, I have this time to reflect overall. And at that time, it's a really healthy reflection, because I can think through, why are these things happening? Why are we having a problem with this habit or with this book? And it's at a place where then I can actually brainstorm to come up with a solution, and go back through atmosphere, discipline, and life in our home for that process. So I really think having a time for reflection and assessment is an important role of the teacher. And Celeste, in your workshop 5 at the CMEC retreat this summer, you spent a long time walking us through the end of term reflection and wrote an incredible guide on how you go through that, and talked about how really it's the mother's key to hope and growth. And do you agree, though, that it's not in the day-to-day, not to get too bogged down in reflection or this kind of navel gazing that we can do?
Yeah. For me, it is healthier to sort of do that on a term by term basis. And I do the same thing as you. About, I don't know, 6 weeks before school, and so like halfway through the term, I title a page in my notebook to consider for next term. And then the things that come up week by week just go on that list, and I try not to really dwell on it too much until I do get the quiet time where I can step apart from our school schedule and have that perspective, like you said, and then think through those things that I want to change. Because doing it in the day-to-day or even in the week-to-week, it does end up being sometimes more discouraging than it is proactive. So it helps me to put it down, don't forget about it, but put it there, move forward with the rest of our term so that we can finish it all the way through.
Okay, so those were our 3 tips for ending the term well, and then we'll have to go back and watch our video to see what were our 3 tips to begin, the next term in another week. So just keep going. So thank you for tuning in. We wish you calm, peace, and happiness in your home. And we would love for you to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you've stayed all the way to the end to hear all 3 tips. And we'll be back soon with another chat.